Hey everyone, welcome back to day 2 of the Commercial Vehicle Business Summit. My name is Gregory Skinner. I'm VP of Strategic Insights at Escalent, which is a global analytics and advisory service. And I'm happy today to have a group of well-informed, intelligent, dynamic panelists to talk about CV growth strategies. I'll just do some quick introductions and then I'll let them express who they are themselves. At least in my top right corner is Alan Levy. He's the founder of Crestline Auto Transport. Just going around the horn is Sara Montalat Verdú, who is Director of Program Management for Exos. And then, of course, there is Jennifer Weaver, who is OEM Market Development Manager for the Clean Fuels Alliance of America. And today, as mentioned, we're going to be talking about the variety of different growth strategies that exist out there. As everybody who's watching this presentation knows, there's a lot of things happening in this marketplace. There's a lot of questions around what to do next. And as I mentioned yesterday in my presentation, it's a really great time to think about growth rather than protecting business and enterprise. Now is the time to lay the seeds of growth, because when we come out of this sort of hectic, frenetic environment that we're in, that's when all companies are really going to start to take off. So let me just get everybody to introduce themselves really quickly. Just take a minute or two. Jennifer, why don't we start with you real quick?
Sounds good. Thank you, Gregory. And thank you all for joining us this afternoon. My name, as Gregory said, is Jennifer Weaver. I serve as the OEM Market Development Manager for Clean Fuels Alliance America. And Clean Fuels is the national trade association for the biodiesel, renewable diesel, and sustainable aviation fuel industries in the United States. You may have previously known of us as the National Biodiesel Board. So we broadened the tent about a year ago and rebranded to bring other low carbon liquid fuels into the mix as well. And I serve as a liaison basically with the auto and engine manufacturers and their fleets and dealers. So I'm based in Michigan in auto country, and have had the pleasure of serving in this role for over 20 years and really seen the growth of the biodiesel industry over that time, and an immense growth in the amount of OEM support that we have for the fuels. So we'll touch on that a little bit throughout the session, I'm sure.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. Sara, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you, Gregory, and I'm very excited to be part of this panel today. I'm the Director of Program Management at Exos. Exos is a leading battery electric truck manufacturer and service provider. And our goal right now is to make the transition from diesel to electric as seamless as possible for fleet owners and operators. At Exos, we have we operate 4 different divisions to support mainly last mile and regional mile fleets. First of all, our vehicles, of course. We are focused on class 5 and 6 step bands, as well as we are in development of class 6, 7, and 8 trucks. We also have a division that's, we call it Exosphere, which is our proprietary fleet management software. We also provide energy solutions to our customers to ensure they have all the charging infrastructure ready to get the vehicles up and running. And then finally, we have our 4th division that's called Powered by Exos, and basically applies our battery and electric drivetrain expertise to some smaller volume specialty vehicles.
Right, right. Perfect. Thank you, Sara. Alan, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yes, thank you, Gregory, and thank you to Work Truck Solutions and to this panel in particular. It's a pleasure to be here. I am Alan Levy, the founder of Crestline Auto Transport. We are a non-asset-based finished vehicle logistics company where we arrange for the transport of vehicles. Not only do we support a variety of different verticals within auto transport, we spend a lot of our time and our attention in the fleet and commercial space, where we have deep relationships with the OEMs, automotive groups and dealerships, body manufacturers, upfitters, and of course, the end user or the customer. And we are proud to be a strategic partner of Work Truck Solutions, where we are integrated into the convoy.com platform, where on any of the inventory that's promoted and marketed on that platform, you can get a real-time shipping quote. and we will assign reliable transport to pick it up and deliver it to the end user.
Perfect. I should probably introduce myself. Gregory Skinner, VP of Strategic Insights for Escalent, a advisory and analytics company. We are global. I specialize in both passenger and commercial vehicles. My role is very customer facing. So I'm the person who is speaking to enterprise, speaking to the guys on the ground, doing ride-alongs, really to understand what's going on in the marketplace and thinking about the future. So what are the things that are going to affect this industry? What are the things that are going to affect your business? And then speaking to whether it be dealers, OEMs, tier 1, tier 2 suppliers, helping them understand what it is that needs to be a key consideration or key considerations moving forward. All right, so before we get started, one thing I do want to say to the audience is if you have questions or if there are things you want to comment on as the panelists go and start to talk about their areas of expertise and their point of view on the subject, then go ahead and post them in the chat. I got my eye on the chat, so I'll make sure that we address them before this conversation is over and hopefully give you the answers that you're looking for. So where I want to start this conversation is this, because the whole session, the whole last 2 days is focused on this idea of growth. I personally define growth as, let's say, innovation or new ways of thinking or new solutions that result in either operational or financial stability and gain. So if we were going to level set this, I'm really curious what each of you or how each of you might define growth, either from your perspective or from your business perspective. Jennifer, do you want to kick it off for us?
Certainly. Thank you, Gregory. Great question. Really, for the biodiesel and renewable diesel industry, our outlook on growth comes from looking for opportunities for use and consideration of our fuel in the segment of vehicles that already dominates the commercial vehicle market, and that's diesel vehicles. So biodiesel and renewable diesel can be used in any diesel vehicle or equipment. And it's a very, very easy solution and a very cost-effective solution for fleets who are looking to decarbonize, to just change the fuel that they're using in their existing diesel fleet. So just to throw some numbers at you based on the latest vehicles in operation data from S&P Global Mobility, 97% of the Class 8 trucks, semi-trucks on the road now are powered with diesel engines. Over 76% of the entire population of commercial vehicles are diesel engines. School buses, transit buses in the 70 to 80+%, are diesel powertrains. So there's a lot of opportunity to be running those existing diesel vehicles on a much cleaner fuel today, just by simply putting a different fuel in the tank. On the fuel side, what that translates into for us, last year, 2022, Clean Fuels members produced and used over 3.5 billion gallons of biodiesel, renewable diesel, which translates to roughly about 8% of the 40 billion or so gallon on-road diesel market. Our vision as an industry is to grow that to 6 billion gallons by 2030. And in doing so, we would help the world avoid over 50 million metric tons of CO2 just by putting a different fuel in the tank. Right. And then looking a little farther ahead, by 2050, we want to be up to 15 billion gallons a year, which would be about 38 to 40% of the on-road diesel market. So that's kind of our vision for growth.
It's kind of funny because when we think about diesel, we always think about that market contracting, not about it growing. But the perspective that you're offering is no, there's actually a significant amount of growth that's possible if we just sort of change the way that we look at the fuel as a whole.
Exactly.
Okay. Sara, what's your definition of growth?
Yeah, I think that we can look at the growth, the market growth in general, also the business growth, right? And if we look at the business growth, of course, like sales volume and production volume, that is growth for the business. If we look at the market, I think that like starting to get into new areas or working with new use cases in which we can expand to, I think that would be a trigger for growth. Right now, within the last mile, our main customers are mainly within parcel delivery, uniform rental, armored money transporters, but we are seeing an increased interest on food and beverage, utilities and municipalities. And also, like, I think that the limit is the sky. We can also expanding to areas such as like caterers, TV news, pet care, landscaping. Like I think that everyone that is within the last mile or regional mile industry or service, I would say, they might need class 5, 6, 7, 8 vehicles to operate their businesses. So I think that getting into and finding these maybe niche areas where we can provide support and convert ICE vehicles into battery electric vehicles, all these leads to growth. Some trend that I was curious, I checked the other day, is that it's expected that between 2021 and 2027, there's going to be a 70% increase on battery electric vehicles. That's kind of like another like statistic that we're getting on how things are moving forward. I think that the world is not getting is not stopping at wanting or needing packages to be delivered faster and more affordable and etc. So I think that since COVID, we are just gonna like go more and more and more into this growth overall in the delivery industry.
Right. Yeah. I don't want to say that I, for one, am an advocate of quick package delivery as I look out the window waiting for the Amazon guy to show, but I hear exactly what it is you're saying. So I get it. Alan, what's your definition of growth?
Well, for Crestline, we identified early on, probably a few years ago, that the fleet and commercial market is a growth market, and it will continue to be so. Small business drives the national GDP. Fleet and commercial drives a lot of profitability within under rooftops and within those dealerships that understand how to focus on good commercial and fleet type business. And oftentimes commercial and fleet type business is organically translates into business onto the retail side, because a lot of the small businesses may have people within their own ecosystem that need and require vehicles for their own. And so they'll go and buy at those dealerships that they trust, where they're purchasing and servicing their fleet vehicles. But we really saw where there was an opportunity, and we continue to see an opportunity, huge opportunity for growth in fleet and commercial. Businesses are going to continue to grow today, regardless of the economic headwinds and the challenges that we see. There's always going to be a need for additional deployment of fleet and commercial vehicles, small, mid-size, or large businesses. And where we also see the opportunity is for commercial and fleet departments to be able to attract additional eyeballs outside of their own backyard in the form of their vehicle detail pages and their marketing happening on a variety of different platforms, where people out of region are interested in, are in need of specific vehicles, either new or pre-owned, that they can be purchased, and that there is an option for the delivery of those vehicles as opposed to sending somebody to go pick it up and literally drive it back to wherever they are. So dealerships adopting our ability to be an extension to their organization, to be able to finish the transaction and deliver those vehicles to people 10 miles away or 1,800 miles away, we find that there's continued growth and opportunity there for us there.
Okay. Something that's really interesting that I noticed in every single thing that, or in something that each of you said, was sort of two things. The first thing is that we're not talking about the market as a whole. Each of you sort of spoke about niche opportunities in one way or another. And then the sort of adjunct to that is that you're talking about changing the way that people think, whether, and in Alan's case, it's about partnerships and becoming an extension of the business. Sara, you also were looking at different segments of the market and saying, hey, maybe they're going to need these alternative powertrain vehicles where they hadn't really considered them before. And of course, Jennifer, you too. Like, the nature of your business is stop thinking about diesel the old way it was and think about it a new way. The question then is, what do you think it's going to take to sort of change the mindset of the end user or the consumer of any of these products or services that you're offering? Because it's right now people are very stoic and very sort of set in their ways. So what sort of catalyst do you think it's going to take to get people out of their shells and moving along?
I think policy is often a driver, whether people like it or not. It's either incentivizing people to make a change or requiring them to make a change. And, some people view that positively, some people view it negatively. I think that policy has created a bigger awareness of environmental social governance goals among corporations. Whether it's an internal policy and sustainability target or it's a federal or state policy that's making them think hard about their operations and how they can do them in a cleaner, more sustainable manner. Um, it's it's starting to shift the paradigm a little bit of, okay, we can't just keep doing what we've always done. We need to think of a better, cleaner way to do this, and how do we do that in the easiest, most economical and quickest way possible. So I think, policy, whether it's at a, regulatory level or a corporate level, is a strong driver of change.
Sure. So Jennifer, is policy a carrot or is it a stick?
Well, the way I hear it from OEMs and fleets, oftentimes they will consider mandates a stick and incentives a carrot. They tend to like incentives better. So
Yeah.
if they can get a credit or a discount or something, or a few cents off the gallon at the pump, they're much more in line with something like that than being told, you have to do this. This is your only option, sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Get it. Others, what are your thoughts on this idea of, getting people to think differently or incentivizing them, let's say outside of monetary incentives, to change their ways? How do we do that?
I think education is very important, education and training. I think it's normal that we as humans are usually afraid of change and new things, and I think that's natural for us. But just having these discussions, I think, helps bring awareness of what's coming, and maybe realize that it's not as scary as it sounds. I think that as Jennifer said, mandates, incentives, policies, all this helps. At the same time, learning about, for example, in my case, battery electric vehicles, the lower operational cost that kind of adding one of these vehicles to your fleet would bring compared to a traditional IC vehicle. The increased efficiency that would bring to your fleet in terms of power conservation, lower emissions, you don't have to stop for gas, in overall operational efficiency, as well as tech development. I think that one of the big concerns that kind of goes around is range anxiety. So kind of learning about what's available today, whether that meets your business need or not, and then what is coming that can help ease some of these concerns and help as well adopt the change quicker.
Right. Alan, what are your thoughts?
I see ours as a service offering, and what comes to mind when I think of it is speed to market. So if you really look at it, if you make it analogous to a tail, we're right at the tail end of the tail of having the delivery of the vehicles. So what we like to encourage, not only whoever our customer may be, is the opportunity to have a already finished vehicle that's ready to be transported and or delivered in a very expeditious or in a time frame that makes sense to everyone. And also to understand that automotive, we were really the final frontier, or the Wild West, so to speak, of the adoption of the consumer purchasing a vehicle sight unseen. And you saw that really on the retail side. So there's always been a lot of talk about that. And there really has been a very good adoption of that on the retail side. The commercial side is catching up to that type of appetite and acceptance to, I may be in Asheville, North Carolina, and there's no inventory within a 50-mile radius of any of the dealerships or lots of where I need it, and the OEM can't deliver a product to me in real time. if I go online, there are all these opportunities to see that type of vehicle, might be in Sacramento, California. And so having the dealership understand and buy into technology being a catalyst and an incentive to be able to get a shipping cost to go from Sacramento of moving a 24-foot box truck with a lift gate on it, as opposed to it being driven from California to North Carolina, and knowing that the cost is still could be within budget for the end user, and it can be delivered to them within a very reasonable amount of time to speed to market, to be able to deploy that vehicle out into the field to go generate revenue for the business. We're finding all of those as a nice big watershed moment today in our landscape. And so we like to encourage both at the dealership level, but also to encourage at the buyer level that this opportunity does exist, and they can be cutting invoices very quickly, being able to use our services and purchasing vehicles out of just from their backyard.
You know, there's a lot of talk about technology and specifically incentives as pathways to adoption. We get it. Product innovation is sort of part and parcel because we're always talking about things that are coming in the future. Outside of that, though, I'm sort of really curious, what other ways are there for us to get, let's say, the supply side and the demand side together? So just knowing that, you know, the vast majority of people who are listening right now are, let's say, dealers or upfitters or suppliers. You know, I can already hear them in the audience going, this is all really great stuff, but how does this help me? Like, how do I get my customers thinking differently? And when I get them thinking differently, it helps everybody grow. So what sorts of things do you think that we could consider to help the dealer or the upfitter when it comes to growth?
Jump in if you like.
Sure.
I always encourage folks to check out the cleanfuels.org website if they are curious about use of biodiesel and renewable diesel. That's a kind of a consolidation spot for a lot of great information, but it's also where you can find a list of biodiesel producers and distributors by state to be able to connect with those that are closest to you, and or can certainly transport by rail, barge, or truck to get fuel delivery to you. They deliver to retailers nationwide, over 2,400 of the major truck stops you're familiar with: Love's, Pilot, Flying J, TA. All of those are carrying it, but a lot of centrally fueled fleets, can accept loads of fuel that way. But if you're not quite ready to make that jump yet, we can also partner with you on a pilot project and connect you with like I said, a producer or distributor to do a test run on a few vehicles and answer questions, kind of hold your hand along the way for that. And another resource on the website that is helpful at cleanfuels.org is a summary of OEM positions of support for biodiesel and renewable diesel. So we monitor that, updated every year. I just put it back up there a couple weeks ago. And it actually has hot links directly to the OEM websites or owner's manual statements saying specifically what biodiesel blend they support and what renewable diesel percentage they support. And just as a matter of reference, almost all of the major OEMs now, diesel equipment OEMs now support the use of a 20% biodiesel blend, or B20. So that's 20% biodiesel blended with 80% petroleum diesel. So that's pretty much the baseline now that pretty much all the OEMs are supporting. Several are already up to B100 or pure biodiesel, and others are researching higher blends in the middle of there, with the expectation that they'll be bumping up to those higher blends very soon. Renewable diesel is a very similar diesel replacement, so most of the OEMs already support 100% blend or R100 of renewable diesel. So that's a great starting point.
Jennifer, you said something that's really interesting, which is, you talked about, hey, if you're interested in this sort of thing, we're available to engage with you in a partnership, like a partnership project, or a partnership program. That's super interesting to me because, it seems like when it comes to our view of the marketplace, so from an industry, we either look at it as you're a supplier or you're a user. But again, a lot of the people who are watching this are intermediaries, right? They're the people helping facilitate the transaction. So this notion of partnering with them is an interesting one. Is it something that's an integral part of, let me throw this out to everybody. Is that an integral part of your programs to set up partnerships with the people who are helping facilitate deals?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Sara, do you want to talk a little bit about it? What you're doing?
Yeah, I think that, and it's kind of related to what I wanted to add to your question, Gregory, like how do we meet the sales and the demand, right? I think that incentives, definitely, I think that's a very, very important one, just because at least for us right now, in many occasions, we are able to, or the customer is able to purchase a battery electric vehicle for less than they would have to pay for an IC vehicle. So just thinking money-wise, it makes sense. On top of it, if we provide financing solutions to our customers and we partner with some of our dealers, etc., that kind of supports overall the end customer. And if we're talking about like smaller fleets, maybe they appreciate this support a little bit more than like if you're, talking about a big fleet that kind of is already used to this process. So I think that these items are going to be definitely helping to meet the demand and the offer or the supply. And then one last thing would be infrastructure. I think that on our end, dealers and probably end customers not knowing what's the solution regarding or how are they going to charge their vehicles. I think that can be scary, and that's one of the things that might be a deterrent for them to kind of jump on the ship and start transitioning from IC to battery electric trucks. So providing a solution to that, making sure that there's charging infrastructure around and that this concern is at ease, that could also help meet this supply and demand that we're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Now, one of the things I do want to talk about is this idea of things that are suppressing growth. And I know we're talking here about all the things that can grow a marketplace, but we have to be realistic about it and say, you know what, there's a lot of things that are holding back this market from growing in general. Like, I mean, off the top of my head, I'm thinking there's almost like a lack of sensitivity from the supply side to what the market wants and needs. So we roll out these giant solutions and say, okay, everybody on board, without really considering, hey, there's lots of guys out there who have small fleets, like 3 vehicles or 10 or 15. Not everybody has a fleet of 1,000 vehicles or more. Or we go, you know what, there's a lack of capability right now on the technical side when it comes to customers. Like, they don't know this technology. They don't know all these things are available to them, and yet we expect them again to adopt. Or the big elephant in the room is just the sheer cost. When it comes to growth in any market, it takes a lot of money and a lot of people to get things done. So let me throw this out to you. What do each of you feel are things that are sort of holding back the market from reaching its full potential?
I'll jump in here real quick. And I see it as an opportunity more than there being a suppression of growth or a constraint. We all know that the supply chain situation today has, addressed lots of different issues to be able to pump a lot of new vehicles and new manufactured vehicles into the marketplace. But when you're talking about small businesses that are ready to grow, but they may have a fleet of 10 to 15 vehicles, it's up to the relationship that the dealership or the fleet management company has with that small business or that business in general to say, well, typically you're using this as an example, Sara, but an F-350 to service and support your business. Well, why not use the F-150 instead? That maybe there was plenty of production that's there, or there's inventory for those that could still serve or service the needs of that business. So I think that with continued education and awareness from the fleet and commercial departments and the fleet management engagement and relationships with the small businesses that exist today and those that are looking to grow or those that are looking to enter the marketplace, is changing the mindset and the awareness and education of, well, what really is going to be able to service their business. And it might turn out that not only is it cost effective, but I'll go back to the speed to market, they'd be able to deploy those assets quicker and be able to maintain the business that they're having today and to grow. So I really think that stronger relationships, engagement relationships, business to business relationships between a dealership or a fleet management company and the end user will help unlock or open up more opportunities than compress or restrain growth.
Yeah, I think, oh, sorry about that, Gregory.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you made a really good point, Alan, here. I think that it is critical and very important that the dealer or OEM or fleet management company walks through the end customer needs and requirements and make sure that we tailor the product to their needs, so that we don't have to overkill. We don't have to go to something that's extremely scary and that's absolutely not needed for that business to operate. So having this relationship is key, very, very important. Providing appropriate customer service, yeah, I think all these items would help small businesses make the transition. I have to say, though, that here at Exos, we have many small customers right now that are making the transition. Sometimes it's funny because sometimes for them it's even easier. Like big fleets sometimes have more bureaucratic processes, and you have to go through different steps to make sure that they make the change according to their policies, etc. And sometimes smaller businesses are maybe quicker at making the transition. So that's also an opportunity on that end, as well as incentives. So going back to incentives, smaller fleets have more enticing incentives to transition into battery electric vehicles than maybe bigger fleets. So that's another opportunity there.
And I'd kind of build off of what Sara said. I think fleets can get intimidated by, entities, whether they are corporate or political entities, telling them you have to have X percentage of your fleet converted to electric by this point, or meet these decarbonization goals. And I think fleets really have the urgency now to just take a look at their existing fleet of vehicles, what those vehicles do for them, the types of work they need to perform, and where they can improve and start to lower carbon. And it's probably a multi-fuel or multi-technology approach. So a product like Sara's company makes would be great maybe for their last mile delivery kind of operations and things. But if they are a long haul trucking firm that has to haul heavy loads across long distances on a tight time schedule, biodiesel and renewable diesel would be an excellent choice for those types of vehicles and operations. So I don't think it's a one or another approach. I think it's a multi-prong approach, and that perhaps is a little less intimidating to fleets of all sizes if they can, maybe we're going to electrify these 3 this year, and we're going to run biodiesel and all of our diesel vehicle assets right now, and then we're going to ramp up to other strategies moving forward. So take a look at it in pieces, see the trees instead of the forest, I guess. So
I want to pull on a thread that's been raised, and it's this. So when I'm listening to each of you speak, a lot of times we're talking about things that are very pragmatic, right? We're talking about fleet size, we're talking about total costs, we're talking about cost reduction, manufacturing, supply chain. All those things are very, sort of set in stone, cut and dry, any one of those cliches or metaphors you want to use. However, one of the challenges is, of course, that at the end of the day, we're talking about people, right? It's some guy or some gal behind a desk who is a decision maker, and they say, yeah, you know what, we're going to go with that or not. They're going to make that decision. And Sara, you sort of alluded to it when you said, hey, you know what, it's a lot of times it's easier for small fleets to make the jump than it is for big fleets because of all the bureaucracy, the admin, the decision making, all those channels it has to go through. So the question then becomes, is this really all about dollars and cents, or is some of this about the mindset of the customer? Like, should we be thinking about how do we change the way that they think about things as much as how do those dollars and cents add up?
Yeah, I think it definitely has a lot to do with that. If we backtrack, changing the mindset in the end, like, why are we doing all this? Like, if we kind of like go back to seeing the big picture, we're just trying to reduce emissions. And if we do not have like proper education on that end, and we do not see the actual implications of not doing so, then it's very hard to change the mindset. So I think that if we like look at the big picture, that's what we are all here trying to do, no matter what technology are we using. And as Jennifer said, I think that there is definitely space for every one of the technologies out there for many different use cases that are required right now. So yeah, I think that just like going back to the big picture, trying to understand the main purpose of making this transition would definitely help change the mindset. We do see that, I'm sure that there's like big fleets that have maybe more progressive mindset in the sense of, okay, yeah, let's reduce emissions overall. Maybe there's others that are looking more at the dollar and cents. So there might be different reasons why this transition is happening. But we do see a lot of customers that are very excited and very willing to contribute and do their part into reducing emissions overall.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Alan sort of alluded to this also when he was talking about the more consultative piece. Mm-hmm. So his example was, let's say, an F-350 versus an F-150. We know that when a customer walks in, they're going to pick the vehicle that they feel is not only going to do the job, but has the capability to do more than the job, which is why they'll opt for a 350 versus a 250 or a 150. I get that. But underneath that is this idea that maybe the dealer can play a more consultative role or an advisory role, so that it's not just, again, dollars and cents. It's more like, hey, have you thought about the use case? And have you thought about really all the things that you do need, because maybe there are other options? So that really is speaking to this idea of, I'm changing the person's mind by getting them to shift their perspective versus anything else.
Well, I think that we're all familiar with the voice of the customer concept, but being in this automotive space for the time that we've been in it, I have found that we're all good listeners. And so as much as what the customer believes his or her preconceived notion is going and walking into a dealership or engaging with their consultant or their representative, truly listening to what their interests and pain points and opportunities are always matter. But Gregory, I agree with you. There's an opportunity to be an upstander within this specific ecosystem and be a good listener, but then also be a good consultant. And being a good advisor and a consultant may not necessarily mean that it's going to yield short-term profitability, but it's going to turn out to be a long-term relationship engagement. And so if there can continue to be good engagement with the customer, regardless of what he or she may be looking for on the front end, continuing to want to engage them and earn their business by their trust in offering them solutions that in the long run and in the long term is going to have them want to come back to you and be recurring revenue that way is incredibly important. And I see that our industry and in these marketplaces, and especially in fleet and commercial, and I said it before, it's a business to business engagement. It's not as if I'm going in as a retail customer going and buying a vehicle and I can be out of there in 8 hours, right? There's a long process of understanding what's right and what fits best for that business. And unless and until we truly understand what the customer is looking and asking for, but being able to offer and provide the right solution and the better or best solution, it's a win-win for all parties. And I see us going in that direction.
Yeah, and as a trade association, we do a lot of education and have fleet and dealer and OEM specific oriented training and education programs, because it's scary. Dealers have a lot of new technology and fuels coming at them. Fleets have a lot of new technology and fuels coming at them. And change is difficult sometimes. So to the extent that we can help alleviate those concerns, provide you with the facts, both from a performance standpoint, connect you with other fleets who've, had experience using the fuel, and you can hear their tips and tricks and that kind of thing. We have a wealth of resources and information that we can share with you, and we would love to start that dialogue and answer those questions and help you give it a trial run. And we're pretty confident that you're going to be very happy that you did and realize you've got very seamless performance in terms of the performance of the trucks, but better performance in terms of the emissions that are coming out the tailpipe.
I want to
Yes,
switch gears.
similar.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Similar to what Jennifer was mentioning, at Exos we do actively outreach to dealers and customers, but we are always welcoming any input from the outside as well, so we can provide tours and training and education and make sure that all these new technologies aren't that scary. At the same time, maybe something that Alan mentioned as well that I think it's important is that we are in such a new industry that any early adopters right now are the ones kind of like a little bit defining how this product will look like. So we take a lot of feedback from current customers and potential customers on what exactly the product should look like, what features, what works, what doesn't work, what do they like on their current IC vehicles, what do they don't like in their current IC vehicles, etc. And that helps tailor a product that if you are one of the first jumping in, then you get to kind of have a product that basically you helped develop. So I think that's maybe another opportunity for both large and smaller fleets or businesses.
Right. So I wanted to take some time and talk about this idea of size. Not only because, again, of our audience, but also because of just this broader notion that seems to pervade the marketplace, which is when it comes to growing your business, economies of scale are where it's at. So we look at large deployments, we look at large amounts of investment, but we know that 80% of the fleets out there and a large percent of the dealers out there are not massive. Fleets are 15 vehicles and less, 80% of them. So how important is this notion of economies of scale as it correlates to growth? Does your business need to be huge to be able to take advantage of the growth opportunities? What are your thoughts on this?
In my mind, I don't think that is an issue at all on the biodiesel, renewable diesel side of things, simply because chances are a good share of the vehicles on their lot are already diesel vehicles. And if they're fueling at retail, then size could matter in terms of the infrastructure availability and if there's a biodiesel pump nearby, in their region. But if they are a fleet that's being centrally fueled, and we just deliver a biodiesel blend to your storage tank instead of ultra low sulfur diesel, then the number of vehicles in your fleet really doesn't matter. You're just putting a different fuel into the same tanks or vehicles. So
yeah, same for us. And actually, I would say that in occasions it's even easier for smaller fleets to adopt battery electric vehicles right now. Just because if you have a fleet of 10 or 15 vehicles, that means that you need 10 or 15 chargers, not 300. And the grid and the infrastructure required to install 10 or 15 chargers is much different than having to install 300. So that makes it, the timelines are much quicker when we're talking about a smaller number of chargers that need to be installed. The utility upgrades are probably not as extensive or intensive. And as I said before, incentives to purchase these vehicles for smaller fleets are even more enticing. So not a difference on our end on like whether it would be better or not to be a smaller or larger fleet.
Yeah, the dealership and or the fleet management company can also truly be that extension from an operational standpoint for, let's say, a business that has 15 vehicles or less within their fleet. From a preventative maintenance standpoint and the life cycle of the vehicle, if there is good awareness and education ongoing with the vehicles that have been deployed and they're out there on the road servicing, the deeper knowledge that the end user has of the limitations to the capabilities of the vehicle from a long extended period of time, and the importance and the discipline that may be instilled through education from the dealership or the fleet management side for preventative maintenance, for anything that can be done to extend the life cycle of those vehicles, it will continue to stimulate opportunities for profitability for those small businesses, as well as enable them not to have to defleet and get into new vehicles if it doesn't look like that is something that needs to be forecasted or in their plan, or they're not capable.
If we were going to talk a little bit about this idea of collaborations, partnerships, business extension, which seems to be a theme among some of the things we were talking about, are there any sort of eccentric or offbeat collaborations that might make sense? And part of the reason I'm bringing this up is because I remember us all having our conversation in the back room, maybe not today, but at a different time. And I remember Sara and Jennifer talking about this collaboration that most people would raise their eyebrows at. Do you guys want to, do you know what I'm referring to? You want to talk about it a little bit? Because it's a fascinating idea.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of part of a bigger concept that we call the time value of carbon. And I think, as we kind of talked about at the beginning of this session, we're all facing the challenges of an increasingly warming planet and the acknowledgement that transportation is contributing to that emissions every year are accumulating, and they don't just go up and dissipate. They accumulate and get heavier and denser every year. So the sooner we can start doing something to abate those emissions, the better off we're going to be over the long run as well. So, as we were talking about before, given the acknowledgement that there's an awful lot of diesel vehicles still on the road and in fleets, and they have oftentimes a 12 to 15-year replacement cycle, fleets could take a look at doing something today by putting biodiesel or renewable diesel in those existing vehicles and fleets, while also starting to take a chunk out of their fleet and electrifying those pieces of it that make sense to do that. And if that takes a little bit more time to get, to Sara's point, the charging infrastructure ready and them ready to take delivery of those vehicles, in the meantime, they're doing what they can on the biodiesel, renewable diesel side with their ICE engines, but they're also advancing toward a transition or evolution where some of their fleet is also made up of EVs. And I think helping to build out an infrastructure where folks could recharge or refuel at the same place along the highway, having an alt fuels kind of island where you could get biodiesel or renewable diesel or ethanol or natural gas and have a charging station over here as well. That would be a utopia. And there's some of those kinds of things in California and on the coast, but I think there's an opportunity where that kind of accessibility could be made more readily available to the general public.
Yeah, I think that overall we are all on the same team in the end. We are all trying to reduce emissions. So we just need to use each other's skill sets or each other business skill sets to contribute with this overall goal. I like soccer, for example, and if we're one team and you have different players that kind of have different skill sets, I think that's what kind of the relation I'm trying to make here. If we right now don't have the technology to have an electric truck that travels for 1,000 miles, but Jennifer has an opportunity there, why not do that? And why not kind of support that initiative if we are all trying to reduce emissions overall? So I think that kind of was where my mind was at. I think that we can complement each other, as well as for example, what Jennifer was mentioning in terms of timelines. If we have a solution that we can start implementing today while we wait for infrastructure, for example, to be deployed, for electric vehicles to go on the road and reduce emissions further, then let's start today. Let's not wait for a year or 6 months. Let's start today, and then in 6 months we can transition into the next step and kind of keep growing into this overall emission reduction that it's everyone's goal here.
Yeah, Alan, did you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I'm all about collaboration and collaborative efforts. To apply it to what our space is and what we do, and I think that I had mentioned this in the green room as well, is we help to offset the carbon footprint by the transport of the vehicle being loaded on trailers. So anything that we can do to help to promote and market our services wherever it is within the supply chain, to be able to get those vehicles loaded on trailers as opposed to them also being driven and not only incurring their own wear and tear, but also their emissions footprint. That's where I think we find ourselves being a little bit of a differentiator and continuing to be in this fleet and commercial space. Because maybe several years ago in fleet and commercial, oftentimes these large, upfitted, heavily modified vehicles, there wasn't enough awareness or familiarity with how is this thing going to be delivered to me, or how is it even going to get from the OEM to the upfitter, from the upfitter to a manufacturer, and then a courtesy delivery to the dealership. But there's a way that we can build relationships with each of those suppliers all the way to the end user to stay on point with what we're talking about on eliminating or reducing carbon footprint. That's where we can come into play. And we love to be an educator that way. It's an interesting way to get our foot in the door, to be able to offer our services and be that reliable extension to everybody's organization. But we're willing and ready to do it, and we're able to deploy those type of tactics and solutions immediately.
The thing I like about what everybody is saying is sort of twofold. The first is, and Sara, I really love your point about, on as much as we're all sort of in this market and semi-competing against each other, there is a sort of common goal here. We are sort of on one team, and we've got multiple skill sets that we can easily come together and use not for the greater good. I think everybody benefits. The end user benefits. At the end of the day, we're all businesses. We're trying to make a profit. Everybody gets their fair share, and the whole thing moves forward. So that's a really great sentiment. I think the other thing that's really important to sort of derive from this conversation, though, is that we don't have to do it all at once. And Jennifer, that was sort of your point, right? We can take these baby steps, and these steps dovetail onto each other, and we're still moving forward. And again, everybody's sort of getting their piece of the pie. So it's an interesting notion that I don't think we hear too many people talking about in the marketplace. It's usually one and done, or we're trying to win, or whatever it is. And so it's fascinating. I think if it ever takes hold, then we can credit this specific panel for coming up with it, and we want our commission. Another thing I want to talk about is this idea of how do we enable or empower a dealer? How do we enable or empower an upfitter or anybody else who's listening to this? Are there certain things that, whether it be a philosophy, a mindset, or actual tools and products, that we should be thinking about giving them to help them facilitate and foster growth in their businesses? And if you want, I can kick it off, because part of it was my presentation yesterday, which is, hey, let's think, let's put ourselves in the shoes of the end customer and start to think about educating the customer. They're looking to us for solutions on how do I do this? And because we are, knowledge centers and we are thought leaders, just getting there and talking to them one-on-one, or engaging with them in conversation about these are options that help you reach your customers. That's a really great way for a dealer to set the ball rolling and start getting their customers thinking differently. I know collaboration was a big one. Knowing that their customers aren't super tech focused all the time, and sort of bringing it back to sort of real world issues is another great way. What are some of the ways that each of you is thinking about empowering, let's say, the smaller enterprise.
Now, we do a lot of education and training at industry events and trade shows and things like that, and a lot of fleet and dealer centered shows. So if you're ever attending one of those and you see Clean Fuels Alliance America booth, please come and chat with us, and I will come and seek you out as well, because again, we're not trying to sell you anything. We're just trying to help you learn and give you access to information and pair you up perhaps with other peers in the industry that have, use these fuels and technologies themselves and can also serve as a resource. But yeah, we like to listen a lot. I spend a lot of time meeting with fleets large and small to hear what their challenges are, what the makeup of their fleet is, what they are needing their vehicles to do for them, and then helping to define, okay, what would be a good first step? How can we move forward with this? And oh yeah, that would be a good application for that, and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's a lot of a dialogue, and hopefully, our contact information can be shared with you guys here at the end of this too, if you have other questions. And certainly check out that cleanfuels.org website as a good starting point of information too. But I think there's so much power in just communicating with one another, both the challenges and the opportunities, and working through those questions rather than just relying on the myths that you heard from when you tried it 20 years ago and your great uncle's nephew's dog had a bad experience with it and you never want to use it again or something. So you gotta be open to evolution and trying some new things.
Sara, if I can just jump in real quick. So I had mentioned earlier in this panel discussion that we do have a strategic partnership with Work Truck Solutions, where our real-time vehicle shipping quoting capability is on every marketed vehicle on the convoy.com platform. It's all about education. It's all about education and awareness and becoming familiar with looking and approaching how to solve a problem the right way. So if it's needing to purchase a vehicle and it happens to be out of region, well, this is an additional value-added tool that can possibly motivate or encourage somebody to think differently on how he or she's going to purchase that vehicle. And if it looks like that is a conceivable way of doing it, of having it transported, loaded on trailer, and having it delivered in a very reasonable amount of time, and it's reasonably priced and stays within budget, then as I mentioned before, it's a win-win. So that exists today, and it has really nurtured lots of discussion both on the Convoy platform and off of the platform, not only with the end user who is looking at the inventory, but also the dealerships as well. And the dealerships can take this same tool and have it apply off platform on each one of their websites, where they could have this quoting opportunity right there on the inventory that's there. And it's all about education, awareness, familiarity that will then change consumer behavior. And that's what we're trying to do. We're excited to be in this position and have already seen some really good positive feedback from it.
Yes, and I don't want to leave or end the topic without offering as well on our end. We do have Jessica Savage, which is our VP of Service and Distribution, and she's been amazing working with different dealers and trying to provide these resources that sometimes are very much needed to be able to continue the distribution of these new technologies for smaller and bigger fleets.
All right, so we're about to wrap up, but before we do, what I want to ask is if you each had one lesson to be learned, based on your experience and things that you're seeing in the marketplace that would help foster growth for anybody listening to this panel discussion. Let's say they just tuned in like the last 15 seconds. What would that lesson be? What would the takeaway be?
For me, it would be getting ahead and starting to deploy infrastructure before we have to start deploying vehicles. Like we've seen that the timelines are long, so starting the sooner the better will ensure that then we can quickly deploy vehicles. So I would say that's the number one thing we are noticing.
Perfect. Alan?
I think ultimately it's about buy-in, and it doesn't matter on what it is that we're talking about, but if there is buy-in from the top down in any organization on implementing and making change and evolving and moving forward, making sure that it's coming from the top and it trickles all the way down and everybody buys into it, then everybody wins, and the cycle time of it really happening will accelerate exponentially.
Jennifer?
I would say don't wait to make those changes. Start doing what you can today. Every little bit that you can do to start greening your operations helps us all, helps the planet over the long term. So while you are working on building out your infrastructure or sourcing those vehicles, start using a cleaner fuel in the vehicle assets that you have on hand. And, lean on us if you've got questions, and we are very happy to help you with that transition. But it is such an easy one to make with the same vehicles and fueling infrastructure that you already have on your lots today. So don't wait for the planet to warm another degree or two. Just do what you can today and keep working toward future options too.
Okay, perfect. All very sage advice. I think it's well taken and well received. I want to thank you all for participating in such a great panel. It's super informative, and it's such a great time talking to each of you, and hope to see you again. Anybody watching, stay tuned. We've got some other really great stuff coming up. We'll see you soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you.